everybody, I'm back and I'm working on the engine today. We're starting with the oil pump and we'll get down here. This is the pressure relief valve and I've got a pretty decent one. It's a little worn there, but I don't think that's going to make any difference. The spring is pretty decent. Doesn't look like it's worn anywhere where it'll break. And then I'm going to put 3 washers on that. I think the book says 2 to 3, something like that. I'll start out with 3. That's what it had in it. I guess the more you have in there, the more pressure that's going to the bearings. I don't know the reason other than if you had low pressure that you'd want to put in more washers, but maybe I'll just put in 2. I think the book says put in 2, with the gears being all good and all. And this is the gears that I'm putting in. So there, I found a pretty nice set. So I think those will probably pump pretty good, almost like new. And then you want to make sure you find a washer to go in behind the cap on this pressure relief valve so that it'll seal up and not leak. Okay, and I've got that all cleaned up, ready for the gears to act smoothly. It's not worn too much. I think it'll probably end up to be a pretty good oil pump. So then you want to make sure, now if you get GP gears, they're going to be a little shorter and they won't work in here, and vice versa. The D gears are too big to go in the GP oil pump. And then I think this has got 12 tooth and the GP has 11. It has 1 less tooth than the D. But that's the way they fit in there. Now I got to put the keyway in here and get the gear pressed on. I'm gonna have to go take that into my press. Here's the gear. I found a pretty decent gear. So I'll go press that all together and bolt it together. There's a little gasket that goes in here. Got to make sure you put that in there. And then bolt that on there like that. So the pressure relief valve's down. Well, I guess it goes the other way. This is actually down there. So I'm going to put it on like that. Okay. And you can't really put it on the other way because Deere made it so they put this ear on there so you can't turn it the wrong way. So it has to go on that way. And then your screen goes in. Make sure you got a good screen too that's all together. Even really good shape, they don't screen out a lot, but they screen out the bigger chunks, which would get into the lines and plug them. So make sure you have a good screen when you put everything together. Okay, now I'm set up here above the crankcase, looking forward, and I'm ready to put in followers. I've got a pretty decent shaft here with a good detent for the set screw. There's not a lot of ridges on it. There's a little bit, but nothing too serious. I'm going to reuse that. And as you can see, it fits in there pretty snug. Usually this gusset over here on the left-hand side of the tractor is usually worn quite badly, but this one's good shape, so I'm not going to have to fool with that. And so there's a series of spacers. I honed the surface of my followers smooth with a emery grinding machine. I cleaned those up so they didn't have a lot of bad ridges in them. Usually they get pretty ridged across there, so I tried to take most of that out. So I think the first one is the small spacer that goes in there first on the right hand side, and then you want to make sure that the follower is more or less in the center of this hole where the push rod comes through. So you want to kind of line those up, and a lot of times those spacers are worn, and so I've found that it helps to put in a washer or two in there. See, I'm already getting off quite a bit. It's probably a 1/4 inch off. And this one here, those spacers wear pretty good in there, so I'm gonna put another washer in there. So I've got the short spacer and 2 washers on the first bushing. So now I'm pretty well in the center of that hole coming through for the push rod. And then I'm going to put in another couple washers. See how that lines up. That looks pretty decent. Okay, and then the spring goes on. And I think that there's actually a part for that on that washer. I'm going to put a washer on each side of that spring so it doesn't dig into that follower. And then maybe 1 washer on the spacer. And you want to make sure as you put that in there while your detent is on the bottom of that shaft, so when it goes in there, the set screw will go right in. And let's see where that is right there. It needs to have a washer on the outside, I think. And then probably on the inside too. Those spacers get worn and get short, so you have to kind of compensate. I think that's going to be pretty good. So I basically put a washer on each side of every follower. Okay. Now, I think I can put in through that set screw in there, just to kind of get lined up. I do want to put some sealer in that set screw and that welt plug on the end so that it doesn't leak, because that is one spot where the engine really likes to leak, is out of that set screw. Let's get the camshaft put in. So I also ran this on the emery belt too. Take out the ridges up on the top, and I made a skid on the plate, on the rest plate on the emery machine, so that I could keep my camshaft straight as I ground on it. And I started, since this was probably worn up here the worst, I started down here and going around first, made a couple passes on the back side, so make sure I got that ground down about the same distance as what it is ground down up here, so I'd still keep my geometry basically the same. So, and then I went around probably 2 or 3 times all the way around to get the ridges off the top of the lobes, and it seemed like it turned out pretty well. It's not rocket science. There are people that professionally will do that for you, but I don't know. It's for an old D, you're not going to really change its performance by screwing up I think you'd really have to screw up the camshaft to change the performance of the machine a lot. So I just did that, and I'm going to try it and put it in and see how it works. Now on the cam gear, you want your dot on the inside so you can see it. So which side is the dot on? There's the V right there. So I want to put the V on the inside. So when I time it with the crankshaft, I can do it from the inside. If you put it on the crank gear, can be probably flipped around too. So you got to make sure that both marks are on the showing towards the inside of the machine or the engine. So you can see them as you can time it. I suppose you could put them on the outside and be wrong completely, but you don't want to do that. It's kind of a booger to get in there. I'm wondering, I think I put it together on the last one. I drove it on and then I stuck it in there, I think. I can drive it on a little ways anyway. Yeah, you can't quite drive it on the whole way and still get it in there. I think I will maybe put that bearing in that side. And once again, I'm using this Permatex product called the aviation sealer. What is it exactly? Form a gasket aviation sealing liquid. And it doesn't get super hard. It still kind of stays kind of pliable over the years to where you can get the parts back apart if you need to in the future. I'm not sure I like the sealer that gets rock hard and you can't get anything apart again. Forgot to put in the washer, the D467 washer on each side. If you don't put them in there, you'll have a probably like an 1/8 inch side to side on it. Those gaskets were getting a little dried up, so I soaked them in a little bit of water for a bit, and now they fit right on. But that's got to be a pretty old gasket right there. It's still got the number printed on it. So I coat that on both sides. Okay, now I got to drive this sprocket over a bit. We'll see how difficult that is to do. Tighten those bearings up as you go. Don't want to pound too hard on it, you'll break the ears off of this. Okay, that one's tight. Got to go in just a little bit more. Close. Now I better put the washer in this side before I forget. Tap it just a little bit more. Kind of got to work everything together so you don't break something. And my tolerances are good shape. Just a little bit of oil in there and it'll be good to go, I think. Maybe just a touch more on the gear. Okay, tighten those up. I'll probably go one more time around that. It's pretty, the in play is very little. But on this set screw right here, I think I'm gonna push the shaft in a little and put some sealer in there on top of that. Get a good amount in there on top of that set screw. Make sure that doesn't leak. And then the Welch seal, drive that in there. Yep, so that should be a good seal up there now. Now we'll go to a different spot and put in the oil pump. Okay, I'm back. I got the gears put in and put a little oil in there. And now I'm ready to put the cover on. I've got a new gasket. And I want to put a little bit of sealer on there. Can't flip it over. Sometimes I do that. So then I have the sealer put on both sides. That ought to pump real nice now. And then I want to put this gasket on. I had to make this one. Didn't have that one. It was originally a cork gasket. And why they use cork, I don't know. I suppose they thought it was more forgiving than just a regular. But I think with the sealers we have now for the gaskets, I don't think it's as crucial. If there's a little bit of irregularities in the castings, the sealer will make up for that, I think. And it'll probably be better in the end. It'll probably leak less than this way than it would with the cork gasket. I think maybe this gasket's still available from Deere. I just didn't have time to wait. Probably put on as thin a layer as you can. Probably more than enough. Otherwise it just squeezes it out when you tighten it up. Mesh it with the cam gear. Now we're ready to put the screen in. As you can see, I got a pretty decent screen. New gasket, sealer on that gasket. Okay, got that all covered. One here, put this plug in where the follower shaft is at. I really didn't need to pull that out, but I think I pulled it out to clean. One thing I forgot is to put some sealer on these bolts. They all go into oil, so. Okay, with that, all I have to do is tighten up everything, and then I'll start on the crankshaft. So we'll get this finished up, and we'll start on the crankshaft here in a bit. Okay, I'm ready to put the crankshaft in. I put this right-hand bearing housing in and wired in the bolts. I've got the oil gauged in, installed, and all hooked up. And one side note, you can't turn that elbow in coming out of the oil pump with the oil pump in there. So you got to make sure you turn on that brass elbow coming out of the oil pump inside the crankcase. Put that in before you put the oil pump in, because I had to take the oil pump back out and screw that elbow in. So just a note. And here I got the crank ready to go. This is a pretty nice crank. I'm gonna mate it up with some all new bearings, and I think it's pretty close to standard the way it is, and I'm gonna maybe have to take out just a few shims to seat in those new bearings. But anyway, I'm gonna try to get that in there now. I left this bearing housing off. So I had more room to work on this side. Marks lined up on the cam gear. That's somewhat close. I'm gonna have to get that rag out of the bearing. I've got the gasket with sealer all on it here, so I just have to get it on there. And I think I should have put the bearing in there too. I got these new bearings. I'm going to leave the front and back bolt out so I can pull my flywheel on with that. I need to put a little sealer on those threads. See if I can see those marks on the cam gear. One off. And then I got some new shims. And they go in. This follows the bevel on the crankshaft. It's tight. I need to put the felt in there. So I'll have to find a felt. I don't have that on hand. So I put the bearing all in there and tightened it up with the set screw, but I've got quite a bit of play in there, so I'm going to have to take out some of the shimming. It looks like everything's seated in there fine, but the crank has apparently more wear on it than it appears. I would say it's like 20 thousandths, but looks like I took out 5. I guess there's brass. The little loops go towards the crankshaft. It's supposed to have like 5 thousandths. I still think it's got 10 thousandths in there yet. I would say another 3. Probably should pull all those apart. Tight now. Add one back in. I think it kind of lines the bearing up if you push that in and then pull everything out to even it up. I think that's pretty close. Might put one, well, let's see. Let's go around to the other side. Some of these are brass shimmed in there, and the brass shims don't corrode. Still need a few out of it. This shim pack doesn't seem as thick as the other side. I'll maybe take one out of this one and 2 out of the other side. I think one more out. I think I'll go around the other side and put one more shim in over there. Maybe one shim less. I think that's pretty good. Now, I gotta put the felt in there. Make sure everything's flush here. This will be the final assembly. The oil slinger. So once again, I had him machine a groove in there for an 1/8 inch O-ring just inside the keyway. So when I put that on, it'll seal up around here and won't leak out past the crankshaft. And I've found that that cuts back a lot on the oil that leaks out around the flywheel. So I'll put a little oil on that O-ring and drive that on there. I think the notch is supposed to be to the left of the keyway, probably an 1/8 of a turn. If I had a big old sleeve to put on there, maybe I'll go see if I can find something. I'll be back. Okay, I found the very thing. It's a oxygen bottle lid. How about that? I've got the cover, got the sealer and the gasket on it. And we'll be ready for flywheel. As you tighten this cover up, you need to center it on that slinger because it will move around, see? So try to get that centered. And that's it for this side, except the flywheel. And we'll do that next time. I think that's it for now. I gotta put one more oil line in here that oils this bearing. And the inside of the crankcase, I think, will be done. Oh, and this idler gear, I gotta put that on too. So between the oil line and the idler gear, I'm gonna do that now and then come back and put the flywheel on, or maybe the block on before the next episode. So keep following me and we'll see you down the road.